Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another rules breakdown, the first in a while. Now this time I'm going to be having a look at the quick start guide for Candela Obscura. Now this is the new game from the guys over at Critical Role. And to tell the truth, there's not a lot of point in this video I'm making, because they have done their own how to play Candela Obscura. And they're better presenters than me, and they wrote the game so they should know the rules a heck of a lot better. But I still think there's some value in having a look at the rules, seeing how they compare to other games, and what ideas we can pick and choose out of here, because they have come up with some really good ideas and some not so great ideas. But let's have a look at the rules. So, skills. Well, these are dealt with on pages 4, 5 and 6 of the rulebook. And they are also summarised in the field guide handout, which they give as well, which gives us some more details. Actually, the rules are pretty much split between two places across a lot of these that we'll be covering. But looking at a character sheet, we can see that this character, for example, the Slink, has 2 dots in hide. So if they're attempting to sneak, then they're going to be rolling 2 dice. So we go 1, 2, and we throw. And they get 2 2s. Well, what does that mean? Well, going back to the dice mechanics, on a 1 to 3 result, the roll is a failure. You don't accomplish what you wanted, and there are consequences. On a 4 to 5 result, the roll is a mixed success. You accomplish what you wanted, but it comes at a cost. On a 6 result, the roll is a full success. You get what you want without any major or unintended consequences. On multiple 6s, the roll is a critical success. You get what you want and something extra. Now, there's essentially no difficulty to this. You're always rolling against the same target number. You're always rolling the same number of dice. But the Games Master declares beforehand how hard the task is, and that increases the consequences if you should fail. So you've still got the same chance of success, but the things which happen if you do happen to fail will be far worse. Now, one of the ways you can modify this is using drive. So looking back at the character sheet, we can see this character has 6 points of drive in cunning. That allows him to add an extra dice to the roll. So he could have rolled 3 dice. So let's just roll 3 dice to see. Now, the first dice that he rolls is called his gilded dice. Now, around a tabletop, you'd probably roll a dice of a different colour. But we can see here he rolled a 1 on his gilded dice and 6s on the others. So he's got multiple 6s, so he has succeeded and a critical success. But if you want to take a fail, because looking at the character sheet here, we can see his hide has this diamond greyed out. He could use it to recharge a point of dice by taking the gilded dice. So sometimes the gilded dice will be the highest one that you roll, and it'll be automatic that you take it. Sometimes, instead of taking a critical success, you would just take an ordinary success because you want to recharge your drive. Now, this is going to focus players into concentrating on skills which they have this greyed out diamond. So they are recharging their drives, and they're getting to roll extra dice. Also, there's a possibility of defaulting a skill. Basically, if we look down this Slink character's actions, we can see sense down the bottom here under the intuition block. And they have 0 points in that. Now, obviously, they could spend any drives to give themselves dice. But they also start with 0 drives for intuition. So there's no way they can roll any dice for that. However, looking at the rules on page 4, if you have no points in action and decide not to spend drive to add dice to this roll, you can still attempt the action. In that case, roll 2 dice and take the lower result. Note that you can't get a critical success on this kind of roll, even if you roll 2 6s. So basically, it's like disadvantage in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. You're rolling 2 dice, taking the lower. Characters also have resistances, which allow them a certain amount of rerolls. So if we look at the character here, under their cunning, which their hide comes under, they have 2 resistances. Now, this allows them to push back against the roll because they didn't like the result. So they got 1 and 2 6s. They can decide to just re-roll the gilded dice. So we'll just re-roll 1 dice. They only get a 2, so that didn't improve things. but they could have re-rolled both dice. It's up to the amount in their skill rating here, their action rating, sorry. So they could have re-rolled 2 dice, but they couldn't re-roll all 3. Characters also have abilities. Now these can modify the dice rolls. So although it doesn't affect the sneak roll we just made, this character is a criminal, and they could have chosen to have leverage. So, on a successful read roll, you may ask the GM what your target truly wants. So you make a read roll, which is interpret body language, spot lies, or gather motive, and you can then ask, if you've succeeded, what the target truly wants. But then later, on any sway rolls you make using this information, so you've found what they truly desire, and you're trying to influence them, so you're convincing, commanding, or consorting with them, you also add your current cunning resistance. So any resistance points you've got for cunning remaining, you get to add to that sway roll. So instead of just rolling 1 dice, you'd be rolling 3 dice for that. And of course, you can add drive onto that as well. So you can be rolling multiple dice to get a really good success by using that ability. Now, initiative. There are no rules for initiative. Basically, it's put up to the GM and to narrative structure. So if you say you are leaping at somebody and attacking them, then you're going to be going first. Now, one of the points that has to be made is that everybody only gets a single action. So if you're attacking somebody, you won't get to dodge. But looking across, there is a dodge action, and that's because you can do that as a full round action. Basically, you're dodging the attacks, and if you succeed at your dodge, you avoid all damage because you have succeeded in dodging. But you're not doing anything else, you're just avoiding getting hit. And combat, well, combat's dealt with like any other skill roll. So you're looking for the action. For punching, breaking, knockdown, you've got the strike, or control for driving, shooting, or finesse. So depending on whether you're shooting or whether you're hitting somebody, you're rolling strike or control. Now on page 6 of the rules, we've got this whole paragraph on fighting enemies. But basically, it's just whether you succeed, you manage to hit and do damage. However, if you do a critical success, then it's up to the games master the effect. He might allow you to do extra damage, or perhaps if somebody's dodging, so would avoid that damage, a critical success would actually allow you to hit. But it's up to the games master the effects of critical successes. So damage. Well, it's really easy. You take a single point of damage every time you are hit. And that's it. But everybody only has 3 health here. So you've got 3 health for your body, 3 health for your brain, so mental attacks will take off that, and bleed is magical attacks. Now advancement, obviously this is a quick start version of the rules, so there's not a lot to advance here, but it does give you an idea how it works. Now it is dealt with somewhat on page 7 of the rulebook, but mainly the circle sheet they hand out gives you the most information on it. And basically you gain power for your circle by completing various aims. Did you contain or destroy a source of bleed? Did you provide comfort or support for those affected? Did you bring something of importance back for Candela Obscura to study? And you fill in these rings. And as your circle goes up, it gains extra abilities. Every time the track is filled, you gain one of these circle abilities, which gives you extra dice and different things you can do. The circle also has various resources based on the number of people in it. And between every game, a character can draw on 2 of these resources and use them. So we've got Stitch, Refresh, and Train. Well, going back to the rulebook for what these do, Stitch heals all of one player's marks. Refresh fills all of one player's drives, and Train gains 1 bonus dice that you can use on any roll in the next session. So you can decide to spend these points. Basically, you'll be refreshing your marks, so you're not wounded at the start of next play. It's the only way of healing. You'll be refreshing your drives, so you're ready. But if you haven't used all those, or you filled up your drives through play by using the marked skills and using that dice, the gilded dice, then you might have points and you can put something into Train, and you'll have a bonus dice to use at some point during the next session. Characters themselves, when they advance, you can choose 2 different options whenever you advance. You add 1 action point, you can add 2 drive points, you can take a new ability, or you can gild an additional action. So going back to the character sheet, as we start off with one of the abilities, the Slink gets Street Smarts or Leverage. If they advance, they can choose to have one of extra of those. They can increase an action, they can increase their drive, or they can gild one of their other actions, so when they're using that, if they choose that dice, they can gain additional drive back in the future. So that's Candela Obscura. It's quite an interesting system. There's some elements I really like, there's some I don't like so much. I really like the scar system, I think that's fantastic. It's an interesting way of changing your character as you pick up damage, whether it's physical, mental, or magical damage, and your character changes. So it can be very different by the time you end play, because 3 skill points moved around out of 9 skill points is quite a radical change. Although I would have preferred for it to be perhaps a bit random. So if perhaps you had to roll a d6 and you've got to roll over the amount of scars you have. So you can die at 1 scar if you're incredibly unlucky, but you can pick up to maybe 6 of them, and your character will be vastly changed throughout play because of the number of scars they have. Perhaps there'll be other ways of modifying that, but keeping your character in play with lots and lots of scars, making them a deeply affected and kind of tragic character. I also don't like the fact that opposed skill rolls are handled in such a terrible fashion. Basically, they're not mentioned at all in the rules, and I can only assume that if 2 people are trying to do something against one another, then they're making skill rolls, and it's just whether you're getting more 4s, 5s, or 6s than the other person. So you really need to be doing like critical successes to affect somebody else. The chances of ties are very, very heavy. I would have much preferred a clarified opposed skill roll system. But apart from that, it's really nicely presented. The setting seems quite interesting, although I'd like to know a lot more about it if I was ever going to run it. But thumbs up. It's a nice looking game. Anyway, as usual, I think I've buttered on for quite long enough. So thank you very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.